What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. As we head into one of the most important elections of our lifetime, in fact, the most important election of our generation, one thing is striking me that I want to ask you, the viewer. I want to ask your opinion um, pertaining to the results of this upcoming election, or what everyone feels the results are going to be coming up to this election. This channel has viewers from across Canada, in the United States, across around the world. We've had viewers chime in from all countries around the world. One of the things I'm most proud of about being Canadian is the fact that I am Canadian. I love my country. I love my flag. I stand behind my flag. The maple leaf resonates within the blood that flows in my body. I am a true Canadian patriot. I love my country. Many people are worried as we head into this election. And I've stated before that if Mark Carney were to win this election, my views would shift. I would suddenly be pro Alberta separation. Now, the reason I would be that, because people saying, well, you just said you're a true Canadian patriot. I am. However, the feeling across Alberta right now is that people are done. They're fed up with the government's boot on their neck. Now, my view would shift should Mark Carney win the election. If Pierre were to win, I feel I could give him a chance. I could let him try to prove his worth. I mean, he is an Albertan. He loves his country just as much as I do, I think. At least I believe that. But new polls are starting to worry me a little bit about what the future of Alberta looks like, regardless of who wins this election. So I want to cite an interview that Ezra Levant just did with Lorne Gunter, talking about a new poll showing massive support for Alberta separation. Before we do that, I want to remind everybody that this video, as well as others, are always prone to censorship on the channel. The Liberals are doing everything they can to censor anybody talking in free speech on these platforms today and in the future. So please, if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel. It helps all channels. Follow all Canadian political content creators on this platform and other platforms leading up to the election. Turn on your bell for all notifications so that you're informed every time one of these channels drops new information for you heading into this election. The Liberals are pushing for censorship. They're going to get censorship leading up to the election, especially they don't want you getting the news that we're about to talk about today. I want to cite again this video interview with Ezra Levant and Lorne Gunter. Apparently, Alberta separatists have a 30% support now without a movement, without a leader. And some really valid points are made during this interview that I want to cite. And then we'll get to my 2 cents on it. Let's take a look. Now, I will have to, again, fair use. I do have to cut in from time to time to give my commentary. I'm not going to steal from Ezra Levant. I would advise going and checking out the full video interview. I will have a link down below in the description. Shout out to Rebel News also for their coverage during this election. They've been doing a great job. Let's go. Let's see what they have to say.
Yeah, I want to ask you one last question from Alberta. I'm a little worried about Ontario, but I am worried about Alberta. If Mark Carney wins, especially, God forbid, if he wins in a powerful way, a working majority, I'm worried that Albertans will say, there's just no hope here. There's no chance. We're robbed again, and Mark Carney is coming to kill us.
Yep.
And I don't know where Danielle Smith will wind up on this stuff, because she's said some things that suggest she's open to changing Alberta's place in the country. What do you think Alberta will do if Mark Carney, Mr. Net Zero, wins?
I don't know. There is a strong, and people have been poo-pooing the idea of Alberta separation for a couple of weeks. Like all the major commentators have said, oh, it'll never work.
So right here, this is an article produced saying that 3 in 10 Alberta and Saskatchewan said they'd like to leave if Liberals form the next government. 30% support. And this is without a leader. This is without a party. This is without a strong candidate. Now, I know there are people. There was a former lawyer who had gone down to the U.S. to push for Alberta separatization. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about a real party being formed with a mandate, with a backing. Because in Alberta, it would only take 600,000 votes to move forward with a referendum. So let's continue.
They've only got 30% support. They've got 30% support without a movement.
Yeah.
They got 30% support without a leader.
Yeah.
You worked for Preston Manning.
Yeah.
You know what the Reform Party would have been without Manning.
Right.
And you know what it became with Manning.
Right.
So if a Manning-like figure steps forward to say, I'm quite prepared to lead a separatist or independent movement or a nationalist movement or a redo confederation movement, that 30%, I think, could easily become 40 or 45%. And with the right circumstances, could get over 50%. And you'll remember the Clarity Act says, in order to leave, you need a 50% majority on a clear question.
Yeah.
So do I think it's completely out of line? No. Like, what would have happened in 1989, 1990 if Preston Manning had said the West wants out rather than the West wants in?
Right.
This is the point that I wanted to make. Preston Manning, if you remember the good old Air Force days of reform. I mean, look, I know Preston Manning. I've spoken with him multiple times. He's a brilliant man. Amazing politician. I quite like Preston Manning. Shout out to Preston. But if he'd have done that in 89, 90 and pushed for Alberta separatization at a time when Alberta was booming, at a time when Alberta was already rumbling around about the possibility of separation, keep in mind, the biggest issue on Albertans' plates right now when it comes to separatization is all of the money we give in transfer payments, all of the funding we give to mostly Quebec to be told that we're not allowed to move our oil outside of Alberta. We can't have a pipeline. We can't have access to other markets. We can't have a prosperous province, but we can keep giving up to 16 or 18 billion dollars a year in transfer payments, not to mention over the last decade, while the federal government has been putting their boot on our neck saying, well, we're just going to shut it down altogether. Keep in mind that this is the same as if you were in Manitoba, if the government said we're going to shut down agriculture, or in Ontario, if they said we're going to shut down manufacturing. This would be massive in the province. This would be a massive blow. That if it were going on for a decade, if it were going on for multiple decades, people would say they've had enough. Now, the rumbling going around is that even if Pierre wins, if Albertans don't see quick action, there's still going to be a push for separatism. And this is what's scary. I'm gonna play a little bit more of this interview, and then I'm going to direct you guys to go check out the whole thing. But some very good points are made beyond Preston Manning.
We would now have had either we would have had separation already, or we would at least have a very strong independent movement in Alberta. And I think we could get Saskatchewan to go with us.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I remember you and I a long time ago when we were both much younger and not involved in what we're doing now, talking about whether or not we would want Saskatchewan because it was leftist and it was poor. I'd take Saskatchewan in a heartbeat now. It's very much like Alberta culturally, politically. And so it has higher it has higher percentages of independent movement or independent support than Alberta does. Alberta, because Alberta is well off, reasonably well off, it's a little bit harder to move that needle over to separation because are we going to mess up what we've got if we push too hard on it? But I think even if it never comes to much of anything, it's good that there is this talk every once in a while because people in Ottawa are going to have to pay attention. Or I think what will happen, like, so in Quebec says, oh, we're going to hold another referendum. And everybody from Ottawa runs over and says, oh, please, please
Yeah.
don't do that. What can
Yeah.
we give you? Here
Yeah.
are buckets and buckets and buckets of goodies that we're going to give you. Here's a truck. We'll just back the truck up and give you more goodies.
Yeah.
I don't think they would do that with Alberta.
No. The opposite. They would call them traitors.
Yes.
And
but that, I think, would push the independence movement even further.
So that's the point I wanted to get across. Alberta would not be treated the same as Quebec. And anybody who lives across this country, I think, could be reasonable and say the same. When you look at the treatment Alberta's got specifically from the Trudeau government over the last decade, when you look at Stephen Guilbeault, when you look at everything that's happened, it's scary to think that these little tiny ticks now, these little things that happen, if another province has shown favoritism over another, could really push the needle for Alberta. It's scary to think that while I remember being a teenager, sitting in front of the television watching the referendum vote in Quebec, and my parents being awestruck at the fact that Canada may be losing one of its provinces during that vote. I can tell you as an adult, it's scarier to think that multiple provinces could pack up and leave our great nation. They could say, okay, we've had enough. And it's all due to globalists, shysters, and thieves coming into our political system and robbing us blind, dismantling our great confederation. I think if you got, when they were talking about Preston Manning, when they're talking about a movement, a leader, again, Danielle Smith has already put forward requests for whoever is the next leader of this country, whether it's Pierre or Mark Carney, or God forbid, we go into an alternate dimension and Jagmeet Singh were to win the election. Not going to happen. Not by a long shot. But whoever's in charge has a series of demands to meet. And if they can't meet those, it's going to form a unity crisis. Now, Danielle hasn't said anything about separation. She hasn't said she's going to lead said movement. But when you look at the backing Danielle Smith has in this province, when you look at the attacks that are coming to her from Naheed Nenshi and the NDP, what if, again, parallel universe, what if Danielle Smith were to stand up and say, I'm now going to lead Alberta separatism. I'm going to be the leader, the voice, the push for Alberta separatism. How many Albertans, how many rural Albertans, keep in mind, rural Albertans almost outnumber urban in this province. I think you would have a very strong push to get that 50%. And I think that now a very strong push, meaning that you would gain some in the cities as well. There'd be strong pushback in the cities, but I think you could get enough to get to 50%. The question for you guys, the question for you, the viewer, after hearing what Lauren Gunter had to say with Ezra, after hearing what I have to say, do you believe Alberta, possibly Saskatchewan separatism is on the rise? Do you think that it doesn't matter now? The damage is already done, that it's already gone too far? Do you think that we're going to see separatism no matter what happens? Do you think that we're going to see Alberta push to separate, especially if Mark Carney were to win? Let me know your thoughts down below in the video. As an Albertan and as a Canadian, I sincerely hope we don't see that. But at the same time, as a father who worries about the future of his 3 children, I can tell you I want what's best for my family. And if that were to mean somebody like Danielle Smith coming forward and saying, look, we want to unleash our economic potential, we want prosperity. No matter how much I love my country, I hate to say it, I love my family more. People would have to make a choice. Let me know your thoughts down below. If it's your first time here, again, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure as you're hitting that button, you click the bell for all notifications. Join me live here on the channel each and every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our live streaming show, as we go back and forth throughout our greatest community on the entire YouTube platform, full stop, to hear what you guys have to say in those live streams. I look forward to chatting with you each and every Friday. I most importantly look forward to hearing what you have to say this upcoming Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy your Easter. Happy Easter. I'll catch you on the next one.